so without further ado, let's start this. Charles, if I can have your help with going to the next slide. So my name is Lana. Why am I here qualified speaking in front of you? I'm the head of revenue at SafetyWing. I built out the sales team last year from 0 to 14 people and a few million in revenue. This year, I'm building out the partnerships team from scratch, from 0 to 1. I'm also a Y Combinator founder, as well as an advisor to many different companies. I started out this remote journey in the late 2000s when it wasn't very popular, and remote work has been life-changing for me, especially as a parent. I can be present for my kids and live the life that I want wherever I want to be, but also achieve very much in at my work. So I can go up the ladder, if you will, and not have to worry about being in the office and putting in the hours and showing face. So for me, this is very personal, and I love being remote, and I very much do speak about it. So this is me. Maybe we go next. So today's agenda, we will start with a quick poll just to make sure where everybody is at. And then we'll go into the panel discussion with the guests that we have invited. At the end, we were gonna leave room for Q&A. So as I said, make sure to have your questions ready. Next slide. Okay, so the first poll for you guys. Is your organization borderless? And just choose one of the following. No, and we don't have plans to. No, but we want to become borderless. Yes, in 2 or more countries, 3 to 5 countries, or 6 or more. 2 countries. And just click submit. Okay. Wow. Over 50% are already in 6 or more countries. About 72 of you voted, 72%. Okay, great. So the majority is in more than 2 countries, and about 7% do not want to become borderless. That's great. I hope we change your mind today. Awesome. So next slide. Okay, so who is SafetyWing and why are we organizing this? SafetyWing, we're building global benefits for the remote workforce. Basically health insurance, remote retirement, life insurance, and the total global benefits package that you need when you have workers living all over the world. If you go to the next slide. So yeah, we have this global social safety net, starting out with nomad insurance. We added remote health, then remote doctor, remote retirement, etc., to build out a complete global social safety net, which usually a country will give. But now your companies can give that to you wherever you go and travel. So today's panelists, I have Rogelio here, John, as well as Alan. I will let them come on one by one and introduce themselves. So we have John first. Very excited to have you, John. Please do introduce yourself and why you're qualified to be here.
Yes, well, look, pleasure to be on board with you all here today. Looking forward to all the questions from the audience. So yeah, I'm the co-founder of the Work From Anywhere team. We take tax, which is one of the main challenges or problems or barriers to work from anywhere, and we try and basically resolve that by putting companies in touch and individuals in touch with tax advisors, and we use technology as well to help solve that aspect of it. So for us, yeah, we see that if you can solve tax, well, you can remove that barrier for as many people and give as many people access to work from anywhere as possible.
Awesome. Rogelio, do you want to go next?
Hi, this is Rogelio Cáceres. I'm the founder and CEO of Global RCG, the Global Residency and Citizenship Group. I'm calling you here from New York. We help individuals and companies access residency and citizenship rights so they can live, work, invest, and retire in the countries that suit them best. And we just launched a product for companies called Corporate Nomads that helps companies sponsor their employees in a fully compliant way, allowing them to work remotely in countries that have digital nomad visas or other type of employment solutions that enable employees to work remotely. So we have now on the platform Croatia, Dubai, Bahamas, Costa Rica, not yet Mexico, but I'm very jealous that you're already there. And the future is remote. Countries like Italy just announced a digital nomad visa. So I think more and more of you folks in the US and in North America will be able to travel remotely and do it in a fully compliant way. So looking forward to chatting today.
Thank you, Rogelio. Next, we have Alan. Last but not least, he's been working 14 hours a day the last month, getting everybody's taxes ready for tax day, which was yesterday. So Alan, please.
Oh yeah, that's right. My name is Alan Feaster, and I'm glad tax season is finally over for most of the people. But I'm a CPA, and I work for Greenback Expat Tax Services. We're a consulting firm, tax preparation firm, 100% virtual. And we only hire tax attorneys, CPAs, and enrolled agents on our staff that have a lot of experience with expat issues, which is our focus. So I've been an expat myself. I've lived in Saudi Arabia, South Korea, Denmark. Now looking from New Orleans, looking south to Uruguay or maybe Panama. And at Greenback, you know, what we try to do is we just try to take the stress and frustration out of the whole process. Try to make things as easy as possible, whether it be tax preparation for you or for your company, to really explain your options and choices in a simple and easy yet comprehensive way, so you really know, what your options are. We focus specifically on U.S. tax issues, but we also have sister companies in the UK, Canada, and Germany.
Oh, that was very nicely said. Thank you, Alan. So yeah, this is really cool to have you guys. We get this question asked quite a bit in terms of like, what do I do with taxes? I'm living all over the world. I have employees or contractors in many different countries. How do I figure out taxes, benefits? Am I compliant? Am I not? And usually I don't know how to answer. So I wanted to host this webinar and bring on the experts. This way we can discuss some of the pressing questions and issues. So maybe the next poll for us, and we can go into the Q&A, is what do you feel is the biggest benefit for borderless companies? Is it an access to a bigger talent pool? Does it open up to new markets, lower labor costs, or something else? So the people that are joining us today, there's about 160 of you. Please vote and let us know what do you think is the biggest benefit for going borderless? Okay, great. So access to a bigger talent pool. Awesome. That's what I would also answer, exactly that. Some say open to new markets, so that makes a lot of sense. Well, let's start there. What do you guys think of the panel? So John, Rogelio, and Alan, maybe John, you go first. In terms of this question, what does it bring up for you? What are some of the biggest benefits you see customers come through?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is, you mentioned it here, it was mentioned in the poll, reflecting the poll. Basically, it's the access to this talent pool. And so, you've got two aspects to work from anywhere. You've got the hire from anywhere, which is structurally, being able to hire from people from all over the world. And then you've got the separate, like temporary international remote work, where you allow people who have a base and want to work, work from anywhere for maybe a couple of weeks or months. I'll give you one takeaway from the white paper that we released a couple of weeks ago. We asked people, how do you see work from anywhere evolving in your company's industry over the next 10 years? And basically 55% said it will be an industry standard. Another 38.5% said it will have a moderate impact, and less than 7% said it will have no impact. So what we're seeing there is, and also reflected in other answers in the survey, was this challenge of one of the biggest pain points is employee attrition if we don't offer some element of work from anywhere. So I think certainly if you look at the employee benefit side of it, that's coming up as absolutely crucial, particularly if you're in the game of having remote workers who are highly mobile and you're in that battle for talent. If you're in an industry where there isn't that battle for talent, maybe not quite as applicable, but if you are in that battle for talent, yeah, it's going to be a factor.
I think from our perspective, we're all for being able to hire anywhere, work anywhere you'd like, but unfortunately, unless you have employment authorization to work in another country, typically your company will say no to that request. And while Americans can work remotely within the US, any request to work remotely in other countries is typically denied. And so how do you solve that? How do you enable Americans to work remotely, not just have them hire individuals in other countries? And that comes through doing it in a compliant fashion, in a way that companies avoid permanent establishment risk and avoid setting up subsidiaries. And that is the digital nomad visa, something that was launched in July of 2020 by Barbados. Now nearly 20 countries around the world offer it. And it allows you to work in another country completely legally without exposing your company to any issues related to compliance risk, right? Are you setting up a subsidiary? Are your employees there legally? Yes, they are. They're in fact invited in because they meet the requirements. And this can really unlock what in our research shows to be the #1 perk or benefit that any US employee, at least in the tech sector, wants. It's not bonuses, it's not retention, it's not more foosball tables. Let me work internationally. Let me spend a year abroad working in countries that I want. And these digital nomad visas will enable them to do so in a compliant fashion and in a tax-free fashion if they spend 330 out of 365 days. Not to segue into taxes, but there are a lot of benefits to doing so remotely, not to mention the cost of living savings, but also the savings in taxes if you spend enough time abroad.
Yeah.
That's great, Rogelio. I'd love to get Alan's perspective on taxes and then back to John on the permanent establishment, because that's a big one.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Well, what I see is, we've got a lot of people coming to us starting businesses or wanting to expanding their businesses with really great ideas, fantastic ideas. And, that's great. We really encourage that, get out there, get your business going, get your brand name out there, get people aware of your product. I mean, if you have a great idea, just go ahead and execute on that. I mean, fundamentally, that's the most important thing up front. But don't forget about all of the compliance issues that can come along with that, including tax, making sure you're registered in a company with employees if you have to, permanent residency issues. So don't let all of these tax or compliance issues hold you back from your idea if it's a very good, solid idea. But don't forget about all of that stuff either, because it can really tank you in the end. It's great if you can try to get ahead of it and plan as good as possible. But if you've got a great business idea, you're not going to want to sit on that either.
I think maybe just following up on that as well, great point, Alan. If you come back to the permanent establishment aspect, I think that's very, very relevant, because when we asked people, when we did that survey, and it was 110 companies employing 1.7 million people around the world. So it's not like it was tens of thousands of companies, but for that subsegment of companies that we did survey, basically permanent establishment was the biggest pain point, was the biggest headache for people. The reason companies were saying no, and if you define what that is at a very, very high level. Yes, at a very, very high level, what is permanent establishment? Well, basically, you have individual tax residency. For you as an individual going abroad for a certain number of days, you'll trigger an individual tax residency yourself, most likely. Obviously, for Americans, it can be different, but in general, that's how it works. And then separately, you can trigger also a tax residency for your company, and that's what's called permanent establishment. So, for example, if you're a senior director, or especially if you're in a sales generating role, depending on the nature of your role typically, as well as the duration and a few other factors, you can trigger that corporation tax residency. So you can imagine this: if you end up having to pay a bit of taxes for you as an individual, becoming individual tax resident, maybe that might be 10, 20, 30, 40K. Whereas if you actually trigger corporation tax residency, that could cost your company millions. So it's one of the risks that people are really, really wary of. There are other risks as well. Let's say visa and immigration, for example, you have to have the work permit. Data and security can be a huge headache, particularly if you're a technology company or in a data sensitive area. Individual taxes for sure. There are other aspects to consider as well, but certainly permanent establishment is one of the reasons your company is saying no to work from anywhere in some cases. And to be fair, work from anywhere isn't work anywhere you want. It's not like you can go to North Korea. You've got to pick the countries you go to manage those risks, but certainly permanent establishment was one of the biggest risks.
Okay, and I'd love to hear from Rogelio, you're on mute, but how do you solve for that, John? Like, how do you tell companies what's the quickest way to do it? And I want to hear from Rogelio as well, like, what is he offering these companies? Do you say, hey, you have to pick 5 countries, you have some kind of establishment there, or use some kind of technology to have that, or do you use a digital nomad visa for those people that are in that country? What do you do?
Yeah, there's 4 different ways. If you look at Hopin, Hopin's a good example. Go to the Hopin careers page, look for their open roles, and they give a great example of it. So depending on what country you're in, they'll either employ you via an entity, or via an employer of record, or via a contractor. And it's in a limited number of countries. So in some countries, it'll be where they have a legal entity. In others, it's countries that are open to employers of record. In other countries, it'll be a contractor. So essentially, there's about 4 different routes you can go. You can set up a legal entity, number 1, or a branch, for example. Or number 2, you can also, for example, go via an employer of record. And number 3, you can hire people as a contractor. Or number 4, you can also look at the digital nomad visa route. It will depend on the circumstances. Some countries will be not open to employers of record, like South Korea, for example. Some countries will be very strict on contractor misclassification, so the contractor route won't work there. But I think the bottom line is for, let's say, for a company, if you're going to offer this, you need to focus on what countries you're going to allow it, because you need to develop the competence and knowledge of understanding what are the consequences of doing it. You do not want to accidentally trigger, for example, permanent establishment by allowing somebody to work for a period of time in that country.
Well, and that's where, and I guess I'm a one tune, one song pony today, but digital nomad visas specifically were created to eliminate any type of PE risk. They specifically allow an employee to work there, not pay any taxes locally, as long as they are meeting the requirements. And these requirements are very easy to understand. The applications are not difficult to execute on, and they're designed to welcome employees, but not to trap them into, or trap their companies in particular into, unfunded liabilities. And the list of countries that are offering this is only growing, right? So Spain has announced, Italy, Portugal, hopefully with a new president now and soon to be in office, they will be announcing Costa Rica, Brazil, last month announced this. I think it is the wave of the future. It's a way to attract and to unlock the value of talent globally by removing this objection that companies very rightfully have been hesitant to let their employees work remotely. So if it's a choice between having to set up a subsidiary or hire a PEO or an EOR, why not just focus on countries that have these visas already? And make it very simple.
One of the challenges just on that is that the only downside that is the capital gains tax. In some countries, you might be okay for income tax, you might be okay for permanent establishment, but you might actually accidentally trigger capital gains tax aspects of it if you dispose of, for example, a significant amount of crypto in a country. Is that something you've seen as a downside potentially, or is that being ironed out in the ones you're seeing?
Well, in the countries that are on our platform, there isn't any type of hidden or risks associated with capital gains. Countries that offer digital nomad visas in general, what they want is for there to be no hidden issues or compliance risks at all. Else that obviously removes the issue, the attractiveness of those countries. And so what they've set up are ways for people to work remotely and do so for up to a year. Right? In many cases, you can renew these. But if we just focus on these countries, you really are giving yourself a pretty broad list of, from Iceland to Mauritius to Bali to Greece, Georgia, Croatia, Estonia, the list, Hungary, the list continues to grow. And I think it will for the foreseeable future, because countries are realizing that they attract these knowledge independent professionals, and the economies benefit from that, as well as the employees.
And Rogelio, how are you seeing the prices for that? So let's say I'm a founder, I have a company, and I want to decide on these 3-4 options that John mentioned. If I go with a digital nomad visa, I'm giving my employees and contractors a limited kind of offer. Here's the countries you can go to. You cannot go everywhere. If I do an EOR, because they, let's say, are in 180 countries, then that potential contractor or employee can move around. So I want to kind of maybe discuss some of those options in terms of pricing. What does it look like for the company or establishing something in a country?
Well, I'll tell you, our offering on a per employee basis ranges from $500 to $700 a month. And if you just quantify the savings alone in cost of living for that employee to live abroad versus in San Francisco, New York, they're already ahead. When you add the savings that the company has from potentially not paying payroll taxes in the US, from not paying the obviously federal income tax in the US, when you add the savings that the employee, if he spends over 330 out of 365 days in federal taxes, the FEIE rule. So already, if you're comparing the healthcare cost savings from not having them on their healthcare in the US versus having them on SafetyWing healthcare, for example, the savings really add up really quickly. Not to mention the increased engagement, the ability for Americans to really explore the world and enjoy what you've mentioned at the top of the discussion is the benefit of working remotely. See, remotely shouldn't be remotely within just my apartment or my state or the East Coast. It should be global, right? The Borderless Company starts with having folks travel as they can, yes, compliantly, and the simplest way to do that is to ring fence that into what now is 20 plus countries. Yes, it's not 180, but that list continues to grow, and there's some very nice ones in that list.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'd like to jump in here a little bit. With permanent establishment, there's some general rules about that. And what it really means is, are you within a jurisdiction's tax authority, under the tax ban? And there's some general rules, and they all vary depending on what country you're in. But if you're an individual and you're there for 6 months or more, generally you fall within their tax system. You can be considered a permanent resident. If you're a company, then there's some general guidelines out there. So if you just simply have some inventory stored in a country, that doesn't mean necessarily that you meet the permanent establishment agreements. You have to do things like have employees there, have a permanent office there, have a small factory there. I mean, you have to have some good legitimate ties. Or you want to make it avoid seem like you have legitimate ties because you don't want to be pulled into that tax jurisdiction. I mean, that's the big fear here, that all of a sudden the tax man is going to come knocking on your door. You had no idea that you were even exposed to any liability. But on the flip side, sometimes you do want to establish a permanent residency in a country that you might not necessarily want to set up an office in for other reasons than tax, because there's a lot of tax treaties that exist with the United States and other countries, and countries have tax agreements, tax treaties with different companies, and there could be a lot of potential benefits in there, such as reduced tax, reduced withholdings, and etc. So you don't want to be surprised and find out that you're within the tax system when you don't want to be. But other times you think you might not want to be in that system, but you could plan to be in it for tax treaties or other benefits. So the key takeaway here is, it really takes some planning and it takes some analysis, even how you're going to set up, because, you might want to set up, as your employees working as independent contractors, but there's other implications for that as well: health insurance, retirement plans, compensation, and etc. So you really need to look at things at a case-by-case basis.
That's where John comes in, because he can basically go into a company and just say, okay, here's all the options, and kind of like assess and see, okay, which one would be best for your company. And John, can you maybe walk us through some of the other options and the costs? Like if you were to establish a permanent kind of like a place for the company, how much would that cost versus an EOR? I don't know what the EOR costs are these days.
Well, yeah, so it really depends. So you've got to look at what's right for you. If you're looking at it from a company perspective or an individual perspective. First, from a company perspective, it is so worth it to invest the time to figure out your policy up front. The worst thing to do is to do this on an ad hoc basis. And you've got great advisors. The three of us here on the table, the panelists, are more than happy to help. But the bottom line is get the right advisors for you to help figure out your policy. And it's not just, it's not just one department. It's cross-functional. It's HR, it's tax, it's legal, it's finance, it's global mobility, it's immigration, it's employee benefits. It's all of these together weighing this all up. And then if you look at the different options, well, the first thing is to survey your employees and ask them where do they want to work remotely from, where do they want to go to, and figuring that out. Once you get the data in, you then have a starting point where you can say, okay, here's a short list of the countries we need to start really doing some research in. And you might find there could be 20 countries that keep coming up and up and up. Maybe it's list number, like it could be, for example, one country in number 16. That's an absolute no-go. We can't allow that. It's not possible at all. But it could be the case for some countries. Hold on a second. I'll give you an example. The Canaries. The Canaries are part of the ZEC regime. They've got a special taxation zone that you can actually get a low tax rate by basing yourselves there. If you have a load of remote workers who want to go to the Canaries, that might actually be a place you want to run towards permanent establishment. So you could set up an entity. In terms of the different costs, the option one is setting up a legal entity. That's the most expensive. But actually, it's actually one of the cheapest if you've got a lot of people that are going to be going there for a long period of time. Yeah. But if you've only got a few, it's going to be the most expensive. An employer of record can be a really good solution. It depends on the role of people being employed by an employer of record. If you've got people, for example, that are senior directors or sales generating people, or people that are doing high permanent establishment risk activities, an employer of record might be tricky. The other option on the contractor side, that's the one that sounds like, oh, it's the easiest solution. Let's just employ people like through an employer, through a contractor route. But going back to the point that Alan was making as well, you've got to look at all of the risks in the round here as well. For example, give you some tangible examples. Contractor might seem like the cheapest and easiest solution, just to hire somebody as a contractor and let them solve it. But take, for example, the likes of the UK. There's a regulation called IR35, which makes it really strict and puts the burden on the actual companies to make sure that somebody is correctly classified. So even though it seems on the surface to be the cheapest, most flexible, the contract route could actually be very, very expensive, and it could lead to a lot of costs down the line. The digital nomad visa route can be very clean, particularly if you already have people in a home country. You want to send them abroad for a period for maybe 6 or 7 or 8 months. It can be very, very clean. You've got to look at the individual circumstances. You've got to watch out for example, capital gains tax in some cases, but in general, it can be a very, very clean route. So I'm very excited to see where that is going to go, because it's solving the short-term pain point. It's giving people access to work from anywhere for a period of time in great destinations, just like Rogelio just mentioned, some fantastic countries there. So there's a kind of an overview or broad brush. I know it's not a quick and dirty answer. It's not a quick and easy answer. It's not black and white. It depends on the circumstances. But hopefully that gives a bit more of a background.
No, that's very good. Actually, can we just check on time? Charles, how are we looking on questions? Do we have a lot of questions, or can we go with what we planned?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions coming in. We've already got about 10-ish or 15, somewhere in that range. If you want to take a look at the questions that have come in, there's some good ones on both on EOR, digital nomad, taxes. There's mostly those 3 categories. So if you want to take a look at those, we could probably start diving into those pretty soon.
Okay, so I'll just do like one more point and then we'll go into the questions. So the last point I wanted to kind of like discuss with you guys was, how do you set up an infrastructure to remain compliant? Where should the audience start? Like a lot of you guys are solving different parts of the puzzle. Do they go to a certain place? Do they hire a certain person? As Rogelio mentioned, yes, you are paying $500 a month per employee, but you're saving, thousands more, which is something that I want to shine a light on. So the HR persona doesn't look at this like, oh my God, this is a big, cost thing, but looks at it like, wow, I could, really give people access to live the life that they want wherever they want. And actually, it's a benefit to the company because it is cheaper for us to do it this way. And we profit so much more by productivity of these people that are leading the lives that they want wherever that is, versus telling them you must stay in this jurisdiction all year long, for as many years as you live.
One key thing that I should mention that's also a huge benefit of letting your US-based employees work abroad legally is the ability to hire foreign-born STEM and MBA talent at US colleges. Right now, they have one route only, and that's the H-1B employment visa, which, as we all probably know, is a failed experiment that's completely arbitrary and leads to unnecessary costs and heartache for a lot of talented students that just can't get jobs because they don't qualify or don't win this lottery. Well, with the digital nomad visa or with an EU blue card, which I'll mention in a second, companies can hire these international students on OPT, not worry about the H-1B, and then take them offshore to Costa Rica in the same time zone, to Brazil, to the Bahamas, to Cayman Islands, all the way over to Europe or beyond on digital nomad visas, and have them rotate, which is if you tell somebody, hey, do you want to stay in Milwaukee for the rest of your life, or work in Greece, and then in Dubai, and then in Brazil, and then in Costa Rica? I think most college grads, wherever you were born, would take that offer. So these types of visas or employment solutions allow companies to recruit the very best talent, not just the ones that are born in or have the right paperwork necessary in that particular country. So it's another benefit, I think, that as an HR person, when you compare the ability to hire anyone you want out of a top college and not worry about the H-1B expense, $5,000 to $10,000 per person, complete crapshoot, or spend a little bit of money with an expert to position and move your talent abroad, it's really a no-brainer when it comes down to it.
That's an interesting point. That's something that we don't mention very often. We usually say, look globally to hire your talent, but actually in the US, there's quite a few of those students that do not get the visa because the H-1B, it is a lottery system, which many people are left with nothing. So
exactly. It's
great.
all about providing.
That question that is, you asked about the infrastructure. The infrastructure depends on the countries you're looking to work from anywhere in. As I said, in some countries, it could be the case that the contractor route is the best route, and you might need a light infrastructure. In other countries, it might be the entity is the way to get it up, but you need a heavy infrastructure. So it depends on the countries you're going around.
Great.
Yeah, and just like John said, it's so important to understand what your employees want. Why go through all the trouble of setting all this up if they want to live in Milwaukee for the rest of their life, which is perfectly fine. Find out what.
No offense against Milwaukee. Anybody on the web?
No, and there could be other considerations as well too. There could be a spouse that has a different nationality that would make some of this process easier. And also, you need to make sure you know where all of your employees are if you actually have a lot of digital workers. They could be floating around different parts of the world, so which is perfectly fine. But when you start developing a more detailed and more advanced strategic plan, you need to know where it is.
If you want to mute yourself when you're not speaking, that'd be great. Okay, great. So I think we should probably head over to questions because we have about 40 some minutes, or not, sorry, 20 minutes left. And we have a lot of questions, as you guys can probably see in the sheet here at the end. So there's a lot of ER questions. The first one is, should we be worrying about permanent establishments when we have EORs and no entities? I think John answered this, that it depends. I don't think
the short answer is absolutely. The job of the employers of record, be very clear in this, is to take care of the employee payroll deductions and Social Security, as well as the employer portion of that. Yeah, that's their wheelhouse, as well as employment law. Make sure the employees are basically applying the correct employment law elements of it for you as a company on your behalf. It's not their responsibility to manage all your corporation tax affairs. If you need to restructure your whole company, corporation tax, let's say infrastructure, it's not an employer of record that's going to do that. It's going to be dedicated global tax advisors. Yeah. So I mean, they can certainly, I'm sure some of them might be able to give some ideas on it, but a permanent establishment is completely your company's responsibility, even if you use an employer of record.
Okay, perfect. Next question for me, does SafetyWing offer insurance benefits via PEO, employer records, or only companies that have a presence in a location? What if the individual does not have a working nomad visa in a particular location? So yes, SafetyWing does partner with PEOs and employer records, so you can get the insurance through all of the different ones. You can also get it directly from SafetyWing through our team, and the individual does not have to have a nomad visa. If you're living outside of the US, you would qualify for this because you would be associated with a company and there's like an association plan that we offer. And then another EOR question is, at times when companies are expanding overseas, there may be locations where nomad visas is not an option. In such situation, EOR is the only solution. What are your views on PE risk in such cases, considering the employees would engage in active business development?
The short answer is, go ahead, Alan, yeah.
Sounds pretty clear. That would be a permanent establishment. You got employees there, you know, they're under payroll. Unless there's some kind of statutory or treaty, you know, law that you can use. What do you think, John?
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, Alan. At the end of the day, if you're going to employ people via an employer record, hopefully they may be able to help you already. If they don't, it's well worth the investment up front of just getting a local tax lawyer in that country to help just give you the advice. Okay, what are the permanent establishment risks? Will this person, what are the roles that are going to trigger this, and what do you need to watch out for? They should be able to give you, some good advice. And at the very least, they'll be able to tell you that particular role, you should be okay. Much better to invest whatever it is, maybe a few $1,000s up front to get that checked out and have that sanity check done, as opposed to finding out, a year or two later, you've just created a permanent establishment risk that can cost your company hundreds of thousands, if not millions. So it's kind of like, in a way, it's a bit like an insurance mechanism.
Yeah. And then what do you do if you find yourself in that situation when you didn't expect to? Well, then what you want to do is just to start boxing yourself in as good as possible. Use legal entities, have separate books and records, and etc.
Okay. There is another question, it just got added. So there's a lot of spoken about issuing ESOPs to remote employees, including in case of EOR. Wouldn't issuing ESOPs to employees under EOR increase the PE risk?
Depends on the jurisdiction.
Yeah, it depends on the jurisdiction. It depends on how payroll is done. I see a lot of tech workers, specifically in the UK, employed by a lot of the big US tech companies. Well, they'll have these or restricted stock units, and they'll have a local payroll, but they'll also be issued a W-2 or employment records through the United States to handle that. So there's no really clear-cut answer on that, but there's a lot of different ways this is being done.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I mean, as opposed to determining pushing somebody over or under permanent establishment, it's not going to be the defining factor. There are other factors that will play a stronger role, like the nature of the role. Are you doing sales? Is it a senior director role? How long are they in that country? Things like that, for example. But at the same time, where there will definitely be challenges is on the individual tax aspect of it, because certain countries, they require you to, let's say, they might give taxation benefits for you being in that country, getting an ESOP, for example, but then you have to be resident in that country. If you go abroad and all of a sudden are transferred to an employer of record, you may most likely lose that tax benefit. So again, it's a bit of a tricky one. It really, it's a case-by-case basis, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going into, there was one more on the EOR. They keep getting added. We are limiting employee stays in each country to 30 days, someone is saying, and tracking the number of employees in each country at any given time. Does this avoid the PE risk?
I would say it helps manage it. It probably will avoid permanent establishment, but it's a very case-by-case basis. I mean, what if you're sending someone to Europe? Some of your employees are U.S. citizens or Canadian citizens or European Union citizens. Little things like that make a difference. Well, they're not exactly little things, but what do you think, John?
Give you a very tangible example of that, just following on from Alan. Let's say you have a sales team member, you have 12 people in a sales team, and in January, one of them goes to that country, and in February they go to the same country, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if they're all working from the same co-working space, I think that's potentially going to come under it. But in general, if they're under 30 days, it's probably unlikely. But at the same time, you have to track it in the aggregate for all your employees and see where are they all going, if they're going working from the same location, for example, because it may still potentially be the case. And again, it depends on the jurisdiction. Some jurisdictions are really strict in this. Others are a bit more relaxed.
And by the way,
which would be some examples of the really strict ones, John?
Well, for example, China. China and India, two countries with very strict, wide definitions of permanent establishment. France, you want to try going down to that place in a director in the south of France for 6 or 7 months a year? Give it a go, and you'll see the risks that you can run into. Germany can be quite strict. Yeah.
Who comes knocking at your door when something like this happens? Like, who knows where your people are at all times? I'm just wondering, like, what is the reality?
This is really tricky. This is really tricky, Lorna, because it's a balance between two things. It's a balance between, on the one hand, a duty of care for you as an employer to know where your employees are, so that if there's in danger, you know where they are. And it's also a balance between right to privacy, because I don't want to be tracked exactly where I am all the time. So, you know, we've seen different solutions. You can do anonymized VPN pings where you can get a general area of where people are to see, for example, if people are in a country, they say they're not. But you know, it's a tricky balancing act. Again, it depends on the jurisdiction. Some countries are really strict on that right to privacy, and they won't allow you to track at all. Other countries, you know, will have more of a different element to it. So it kind of depends. But at the very least, you should know which countries your employees are in. I mean, at a very, very high level, even if you have to anonymize it, you need to know, for example, if somebody says that if there's somebody in Sweden, for example, and you have no people there on your record, well, that's something you as an employer need to know.
Yeah, and I think the general rule here is that if a country asserts permanent residency, you know, you're probably going to be stuck with that assessment unless you can find a very specific way out of that. So I think that's really the key here. You know, if you're going to have a lot of employees in one country or whatever, make sure you get everything planned out in a row. You know, it might be that, you know, instead of just having an office that you lease, you know, you just have different temporary co-working spaces for your employees, or, you know, you make them leave the country so often. But I think in general, you know, once a country assesses permanent residency, you're pretty much stuck. And that's the situation you really want to manage.
Okay, that's great. Really, really good answers. Last question on the EORPE questions. This is a good one, and I can answer very quickly. Do any of the panelists work for companies that help determine permanent establishment and the best route for each country? I mentioned John could be that person, but also maybe others, John or?
I think Alan for US tax filers, for example, definitely his team will have knowledge as well. I'm sure Rogelio as well, you'd have some knowledge or contact in that as well, I'd imagine. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
For me, it would be U.S. only. That's people, you know, leaving the U.S. or coming into the U.S. That's our focus.
Yeah. So our sweet spot, what we do is companies typically have a home tax advisor that does the job for them, but they might be going to new destinations, new countries, and that's where they need the help on permanent establishment and understanding those risks. That's where we kind of do the introductions or help them with. Yeah.
Awesome. And you can add all of us on LinkedIn, by the way. So just take our first and last name and just go to LinkedIn and add us. And then you'll also see, you can contact us directly through there, not a problem. So, okay, now we only have like 14 minutes left and we have a ton of questions. I've divided them in two, actually Charles did. So we have digital nomad questions and we have taxes. So here goes the digital nomad questions. Maybe Rogelio and John can answer these. First off, it's what is a digital nomad visa? Also, what is the first step companies should do before they hire an employee overseas? Do companies have to offer benefits since Europe has free medical care for all? I can answer
that. Digital nomads are people who choose to embrace a location-independent, technology-enabled lifestyle that allows them to travel and work remotely anywhere in the interconnected world. Unlike regular remote workers who tend to stay in one geographic area, digital nomads travel and explore while working.
Yeah, digital nomad
visas are programs that, again, were launched a little less than 2 years ago that specifically allow employees to work in these countries tax-free without any risk of creating permanent establishment or any other types of compliance risks, provided they work solely for their employer abroad. So there are mechanisms that countries have launched to attract the location-independent technology worker that provides economic benefit to the country. It provides certainly a lifestyle benefit to the employee and a significant savings for both the company and the employee as well.
Yeah, digital visas are fantastic. Jump on
Great.
those if you get a chance.
Yeah, and then the question that you guys asked in terms of benefits, whether you should offer them because Europe has free medical care, that's a great point. What I would say is that you don't have to offer benefits. However, in this ever competitive market, it's a good thing to do. For example, we get companies all the time coming to us saying like, oh shoot, like somebody left from my team because they're going to a company where they offer benefits. So you don't want to be in a situation where you're losing talent because you don't offer benefits. You do have these options, whether you come to SafetyWing, whether you go to an EOR, you can do that. And by the way, yes, Europe does have medical care. However, in some countries like the UK, you can be on a long waiting list if you needed to have surgery for something. So if you did have private health insurance, that would skip you completely that month of wait or months of wait and really get taken care of so you can go back to work and be productive.
I neglected to mention that almost every single digital nomad visa program requires the employee to have local health insurance. And so it's one and the same. You can have folks travel to Europe and work in Croatia or Estonia or Georgia or Portugal without local health insurance, which SafetyWing obviously is a leading provider of.
Awesome. Yeah, so we have a lot of questions and we'll go quickly. I understand the countries that are enticing digital nomads. I think the more common issue is employees who are hired in one country, i.e. Canada, US, but like to travel to their home country for extended periods of times. As an example, it's much warmer in India than in Chicago for the Christmas season. So somebody can answer this?
That's interesting. So is there a PE risk when, if I'm an Indian-born Indian and I'm no longer in Silicon Valley, I'm working in India for my American company, is my American company now going to be accused of or?
Yeah, just for Christmas season.
Yeah, but generally speaking, just for Christmas, you're going to be fine. I mean, you're there for a couple of weeks. Generally speaking, no big deal. But what happens is typically for the companies that implement the work from anywhere policy, they figure out what countries they want to offer it in, and they say the duration. So it could be some countries where there's a good, strong double taxation agreements, where there's no major risks, where they might say, okay, you can go for 60 or even 90 days. Whereas for these countries, maybe it's only 30 days. For these countries, it's 14 days, and for these countries, we don't allow it at all. But generally speaking, they'll have a policy in place where they'll say, look, we'll allow you work for at least these number of days in these number of countries. And that will typically be how it will go. And that will help minimize the permanent establishment risks, the individual income tax risk, the visa immigration, whatever it might be. And naturally enough, you need to have a work permit in any of these countries that you're going to do it in. That's just taken as a given. But again, bringing that into a holistic work from anywhere policy that kind of weighs the benefits to you as a company with the risks and the costs and administration associated with it, that's absolutely critical.
Great. And Rogelio, the next question was for you to repeat. What are the cost savings if the company were to go with the digital nomad visa or EOR for a company?
So companies save on payroll taxes, right? Both federal and state, for not having a US-based employee in the US, but rather abroad. They save in healthcare benefits. They're no longer paying, well, on average is $17,000 a year, average healthcare benefit cost for companies. They're paying a substantially reduced rate, especially if they go on the corporate nomad program. They're saving the retention, the replacement costs of having people quit and resign. There's a lot of empty nesters out there who are saying, do I really want to work another 3 to 4 years? Well, if you offer them the ability to work abroad and work in Portugal or work in Costa Rica for a year, well, maybe that's something that prevents that very knowledgeable senior employee from picking up and leaving, instead staying on with you. So that replacement cost or retraining cost is critical. You're saving them a lot of money on H-1B costs, perhaps. Now you're able to hire and attract a wider pool of folks because you have digital nomad visas and, again, EU blue cards in your back pocket to attract that talent. That's on the company side, and that can average up to $30,000 per employee per year easily, just on that alone. On the employee side, think of the cost of living savings between living in Portugal versus New York City. I don't know what the numbers are. I'm sure they're available, but there clearly are significant savings involved. When you add the tax savings again, 330 out of 365 days consecutively, that again is 108,000 of salary is tax-free. It's called the FEIE, and it's available for all Americans. Right, so you add those, and there's a lot of savings for a lot of people in the chain. Not to mention the benefits to the local countries. So it's really one of those win-win-wins, and hopefully more and more companies will explore it as an option to help recruit, retain, and reward their employees.
Yeah, I like to call it smart sourcing. Kind of a win-win for everybody, the company, the employees.
Great. Really wonderful. Yeah, we have, I don't know, maybe like 20 more questions. So I think we're not going to have time to answer all of them. Maybe I'll just, pick a couple here and maybe rapid fire. So one, is it possible to issue company shares to digital nomads?
I don't see why not.
Yeah, I'd say yes. Unless somebody wants to.
Yes.
No,
that's a yes. Yes, yeah.
Another one was, most travel insurances cover medical aid. Will that be applicable for digital nomads as well? So I think what this person is asking, if you have some kind of travel insurance, does that comply with a digital nomad visa? I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, you need I'll speak to your product suite. There's remote health, right? And then there's the local health insurance. There's the travel insurance, and then there's the local health insurance. Countries want local health insurance, whether you have travel or not. It's additional. I think it should be covered, but it's not the requirement. You don't meet it just by having the travel. You need the local.
Yeah, so it's called remote health. That's what it is. Okay, perfect. Okay, and then taxes. There is some really interesting ones here, but I will pick this one. What do you think will be the future definition of countries and taxes? What are your secret disruptive aspirations in that area?
Countries and taxes. Everything ping pongs back and forth. And it usually takes quite a bit of time. I mean, it used to be people wanted to be hired as independent contractors so that they would pay into U.S. Social Security for the benefits back in the 70s and the 80s, and now it's kind of the opposite. Rates get adjusted, companies change their corporate tax rates. It would be nice if the government would do a lot of the work for us, right? They require W-2s, 1099s, all of these different tax statements, companies to issue them, people to report them on their individual returns or their tax returns. It'd be nice if they could just kind of get all of that information together for you. You log into your own personal account, you update some of the information. I would say overall, though, what everybody would love to see, a less regulatory burden. That would make everybody's lives easier.
I think
simpler tax laws.
Tapping into that as well. I mean, work is not a place. We've all heard of that before in the last couple of years, but definitely taxes are. So taxes are still stuck in these old geographical boundaries that we're being restricted by. But that's really beginning to change and being disruptive. If you think of, let's say, 20 years ago, a lot of countries, 20, 30 years ago, a lot of countries reduced their corporation tax rates to attract in the companies to physical locations. But that's being disrupted now, where it's actually, hold on a second, it's actually the income tax rates, like through digital nomad visas, for example, we're trying to attract in this remote work talent. So rather than actually necessarily going first for the companies, is actually thinking, how can we attract the people, the talent? And then that will then bring in the companies after that, for example. And you look at, for example, what's going on with Plumia country. I love what's going on there. This whole decentralization, what's going on with blockchain, crypto, things like that. There's a whole bunch of different technological changes falling off that as well that are going to really disrupt this. And people are going to start voting with their feet. So I think it's really up to jurisdictions to rapidly increase their capabilities here and modernize and bring forward themselves to the next steps to try and make this more easily manageable in a fair and equitable and sustainable way for both the remote workers and the local community. So for me, from my side, I'm fascinated to see how that develops.
Agreed. I think from our side, our big mission is to build the country on the internet. So the first country on the internet, that's Plumia, that John mentioned. That's the nonprofit arm of SafetyWing, and some really interesting things are happening there because we're seeing this global mobility of people, and countries do have to wake up and say, hey, you know, this is happening. We need to all get on board and figure out a system that works for all versus putting up barriers and making it more difficult for companies to open up, you know, subsidiaries or open up their travel policy, as well as for individuals, you know, to not tax them, double taxation, or have all these rules around them. Maybe we have this one country we're part of, we have a passport, we can go all over the world, we don't have to worry about how many days am I supposed to be here and all of that, and who do I pay tax to? So hopefully we can solve that in the future.
I don't know if you've heard, I didn't get a chance to read it, but it says Accenture to onboard 150,000 new hires using the metaverse. So now we're we're hiring in the metaverse. Alan, I'm not sure what the tax implications are in the metaverse.
Are they gonna have to wear the goggles, you know, while they work?
I'm telling you, man, I'm getting too old for that stuff. But yeah, amazing, huh? In the metaverse, you believe it?
Yeah, what are the tax implications for the metaverse? That's another webinar.
Different webinar for sure.
I don't know. Congress will let us know in about 20 or 30 years, I'm sure.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's very speedy. By the way, speaking of the US, somebody said that you guys are talking a lot about US employees. Would the same apply to other nationalities? And
yes, I should have. This is not a US program at all. Countries want qualified employees that meet those requirements, which are very straightforward, right? A salary of $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 per month, local health insurance, no criminal background, and absolutely no working for a local company. In general, those are the requirements. It's no more difficult than that, and that means that the whole world is able to take advantage of digital nomad visa programs. It's not just for Americans, absolutely not.
Yeah, I just want to wrap it up and say thank you so much to John, Rogelio, and Alan, as well as 180 of you that attended today. If you have more questions, which we actually didn't answer, please message them directly on LinkedIn to either one of us. We're happy to answer. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Please join us again next month for the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye
everyone.
now.
Thank you, everyone.